Gary, you got 60 minutes. Your time starts now.
Right. 3/4 of the way. Oh my God! 10. 9. Oh, serious?
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This week on Where the Chefs Eat, we head to Indian Accent. Chef Manish Mehrotra, known as the most exciting modern Indian chef in the world, reveals his guide to restaurants in his native India.
All right. So first of all, thank you very much, Gary and Manish, for joining me today. I know you've got lots on your plate. No pun intended. So I'm really excited to chat with two of the culinary greats in India and in Australia as well. So super excited to chat with both of you. My first question is for Manish. Manish, I had the privilege to visit Indian Accent in India with my guest from Milan. And we were extremely blown away by what you put together on that day. Unfortunately, that day it was a dry day, so we couldn't really do the wine pairing. But we really enjoyed the experience there. I always respect for anybody who really pushes the boundary and really transforms the industry. And you have done that for Indian cuisine through Indian Accent. So if you can talk to us about the vision that you had for creating that.
See, when we started Indian Accent in 2009, I was never trained as an Indian chef before that. Never worked with any of the masters or ustads of Indian cuisine, or never worked in an Indian restaurant. I was always trained as a pan-Asian chef. But at that time, I was working in London, and London, there were so many Indian chefs were doing amazing things, like Chef Atul or Chef Vineet and Vivek Singh, and lot of chefs. They were doing some fantastic stuff. And at that point of time, in 2009, India was still something was missing in India, and then our company decided that we had to open a restaurant in a remote part of Delhi, in French colony, which half the world, they don't know where it is. So we took a boutique property there, and there I asked my owner to give me the chance to do this restaurant where I'm going to cook Indian food, which I want to cook, and the way I want to eat Indian food. So that is how it started. And first trials of Indian Accent, I did it in London in 2008. And then in 2009, March, we were supposed to start at 2008. But then in November, this Mumbai thing happened, and Mumbai attacks and all these happened. So we postponed it till March. And 2000 March, we started Indian Accent. And the philosophy of Indian Accent is taking Indian food and using unique combination. It's not about playing with authenticity but the thing is, at heart, food is Indian, but with a unique combination and definitely some interesting presentation.
Sure. So did you find it hard to change the consumers or the diners' palate from a traditional Indian cuisine to really a modern take on that?
Absolutely, because in the beginning, we really struggled because people used to come and see the menu, and there used to be a table, at least 2 tables in a day used to walk out after reading the menu, that you don't have biryani, you don't have kebabs, and you don't serve butter chicken. And opening an Indian restaurant in Delhi without butter chicken, that was a brave step at that point of time. And then a lot of things, like people used to ask for onions or papad and pickle and all these things. So, but slowly, I went out, we did training with our staff, we started explaining what exactly we are doing and what we want to do. Because at heart, food was completely Indian, but it was only thing is it was done different with a unique combination, presented in a much better way, I would say, rather than just a big pot of dishes kind of a thing. And we highlighted the texture part in the dish, the color part in the dish, that all the curries should not look same, like yellowish, brownish, orangish kind of a thing.
Sure.
So these are the things which we did, and then people, word of mouth, it really helped, and people started coming, and here we are after 14 years.
So you changed the landscape for sure for Indian cuisine around the world, and I'm seeing new people entering into the space. But no wonder you're regarded as one of the greats for the modern Indian cuisine. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, Gary, I know you won millions of hearts in Australia through your art of food, through your TV presentation, just being a likable character on TV, and of course your contribution towards gastronomy in Australia. Now, I believe you're exploring India. So tell me, how did this love story start with India? And if you can also talk to us regarding the upcoming event that's happening.
It must have been when I met Manish. It's you know what? I think my first visit, and I get a little confused with timeframes, it was around about 2011, and we'd been invited. George and I had been invited over with the Australian Consulate for Ozfest, which was a kind of cultural and business, exposition, and it was about promoting relationships on either side, and to do with art, business, food was part of that, and it was really at the height of MasterChef. And I think probably that year we ate, if not that year, the following year we ate at Manish's restaurant in the old building. We had alcohol that time, although I think another time there was. I think the second visit there was no alcohol, but paired beautifully with very creative alcohol-free cocktails. So I think, and my opinions changed over the years. What I loved when I first arrived was this kind of colourful, beautiful chaos, as I describe it, which I think most visitors are they feel that when they first arrive. And I think you either love it or it's something that you can walk away from. I know many visitors that go, I've been to Bombay or been to Delhi, I don't need to go back. And of course, being a great Indian fan, I'm like, well, go to Leh, go to Nagaland, go to Kerala, and you get the full experience. And I think every visit that I've made has given me a greater understanding of what is a very complex, regionally based cuisine. It's obviously it's a 5,000-year-old civilization, a very young country, but very tied together in a very complex way. And part of that, not only the culture, the history, trade, but food is a major part of that. And you can see influences not only from whether it's Afghanistan or Persia or the Portuguese. I mean, it's just such an eclectic mix and really celebrated regionally. So every time I go to a new area, like I was up in Nagaland in December for the Hornbill Festival, and it's just trying to describe to people, there's no spice, there's no turmeric and coriander. It's just not part of what they do, but there are lots of fermented, mustard greens and bamboo shoots and insects that everybody kind of throws their hands up in the air unless they're a kind of future food advocate. And it's very, very different India, but very much, even though they're very proudly Naga, very Indian. So you come away from experiences like that with the Naga chili and heavy smokes and long braises. I mean, even on my visit, first time I've eaten, and Manish will probably laugh at me, but I've never eaten passion fruit leaves before. I grow passion fruit here in Australia, and the possums which are like little animals that scamper through at night and steal all your fruit. They steal most of my passion fruit. So I've got a few vines that I've never taken the leaves. And so when I went to Nagaland, watching somebody just put all these passion fruit leaves on top of a braised dish and put a lid on it, I just went, oh my God, I've been missing out on this for all these years. So
that's the diversity that India gives to you.
So this is, I know it's a long-winded answer, but it is just an eternal kind of source of fascination. And I'm not a very good Indian cook. I steal recipes every so often from friends and I clumsily reproduce them, but it's not in my fingers.
Any favorite Indian dish that you have?
Oh, every time I visit, it's a different one. I was up in Leh and eating bowls full of thukpa and reacquainting myself with plates and plates of momos, but it could be, I was in Tamil Nadu recently and enjoying, idiyappam, for example, which I posted the other day on Instagram because I got up in the morning. I thought, I wish I could have a plate of that. And it's a rice paste that's forced through, to make a noodle, which is steamed and then drenched. You can have a savory or sweet, but I had one drenched in coconut milk with jaggery and fresh coconut. It's just delicious.
You're getting me hungry now, Gary.
Or being on the street, for example, we had the first time I've ever eaten it. It was one stall after another. One was coconut stem, sliced thinly, different ages of coconut stem, and sprouted coconut, which is kind of sponge-like, almost like a foam or bread. So things like, or bun paratha. And I'm just talking about my most recent visits. They're things that I can sit down. I filmed a young man throwing a paratha, and just watching the camera, he's smiling. He's made 1 million of them before, and of course, as a clumsy Western chef, I go home and think, I know how to make paratha. They don't look like those guys. Let me tell you that.
It's a piece of
the
art.
ease in which it's a skill that, and it's respected, in Madurai where we were. Apparently a good paratha master can charge his weight in gold. But in Australia, skills like that people would travel for miles, to come and see somebody throw a paratha like that. So it's these are all the thrills and spills that I find every time I visit.
So Manish, Gary was talking about the diversity in India, which we all know of. Is there a region that you gravitate towards, or is this your favorite, and why?
See, I've born and brought up in Bihar. So Bihar was
Make that too.
Never.
I'm from Bihar as well.
Okay, you're also from Bihar. So
don't start talking about old school friends, because you don't know what's going to happen.
So Bihar was never known as for the food place as such. It was always as a political hotbed and all these things. But there's a very, very great diverse cuisine in Bihar also. So born and brought up in northern India, married to a South Indian, and so I love South Indian food. So I try to capture in different tasting menus in different regions of India, because usually in winters I do more north in Kashmir, where you can use slightly heavier kind of a food, slightly heavy on spices. Summers you go to South India kind of a thing. Mangoes and all these things. The only thing which I have never touched is Northeast, because myself also, for me, it will take a little more time to explore that part of India more.
Sure.
Then definitely. And still, the cuisine is very different from Northeast. And it is a bit of an acquired kind of a taste for normal North Indian crowd, especially in Delhi and all, which people are not that adventurous. So, and sourcing is a big problem also because our coal supply chain is still developing, and getting things, getting a fresh ghost chili from Northeast is far more difficult than getting fresh black truffle from Alba.
Sure. Talking about that, Manish. So Gary, tell me, the Melbourne diners are going to experience something very special in the next few days, from 11th to 13th of August, through the Kanosh pop-up that you're having in Tonka. Can you give us more insights into that event, and also, the menu that you and Manish have curated for that event?
Yeah, well, I mean, Manish can talk about the menu, but, if you're familiar with his dishes, then he's bringing some of his greatest hits, which I'm pleased to see. A journalist actually asked me today, is Melbourne ready for, Manish Mehrotra? And I said, yeah, I think so. It's, I think, if you think about, or when I listen to Manish talk about the origins of his restaurant and how he approaches his food, there's a global market that it's a fly in, fly out of Delhi. People fly in just to go to Indian Accent and experience the food there, because he's been part of that global set now for so many years, part of top 50, Asia's, best.
Yeah.
So I think the name is familiar. The reason we picked Tonka was because it was an obvious fit. It's already got a database of people that enjoy a kind of a modern fusion of Indian flavors. And when I say Indian, I don't mean specifically from India. They can be Malaysian or elsewhere, but that kind of NRI idea of not really Indian idea of Indian flavors. So it seemed like an obvious fit. And I think, people have asked me now, I reckon for 5 or 6 years, why Indian food hasn't, and I think they're wrong when they ask this question, why it isn't as popular globally as it could be. And I think some of it we've discussed. It's the regionality, it's the complexity, ingredients which are hard to source. It's really hard for even young chefs here in Melbourne that are trying to break away from the shackles of, the butter chicken, model, is to bring in things from their region or their family, their mothers, when the ingredients might be completely different. So I think Manish's menu fits perfectly in, what am I trying to say, current model of, flavor first, creative dining that moves easily across borders. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
There's nothing they're not going to be eating redwood, red carpenter worms or naga chilies, but, they're going to get a little taste of, the puchka, for example, that he's become so famous for, or the Asian-inspired ribs, things like this that I think, work so well with our palate. And Australians love, and I've said this before, but we love texture. We love crisp and crunch and gooey and warm, and all of these things translate really well, not in just Indian cuisine, because that's, I always use the example of Raj Kachori, which I'm sure everybody's bored of. But when I first tasted it, take a warm kachori, smack it and fill it with curds and pomegranate seeds. I go, wow, on an Australian standard of crisp and crunch and gooey soft, this is like heaven. So I think it's going to go down really well. I'll be surprised if it's not sold out, in the next week, because we've had a really strong interest. And there's also a very strong Indian, diaspora here. So lots of big Indian community, lots of young Indian chefs that have already said, I hear Mash is coming to town. We want to book and taste. So even a friend of mine rang me up and said, you reckon a table of 10's too many? I go, come on, we'll get you in. No problem.
So Manish, no pressure. No pressure. Yeah, it does. So Manish, no pressure.
Yeah,
Is there something special from a menu that you're curating for that event?
There are many dishes. First, we'll start with some street food. The first few courses are going to be some street food. Then we move from different regions of India, from western part, that ribs he's talking about, that meat pork ribs. These are baby back ribs cooked in
Now I'm getting hungry.
And now I'm really getting hungry as well.
In a Gujarati pickle, and then the South Indian, there's one, this lentil vadai, which I was talking about with the coconut milk rasam, and then definitely our dessert, which is our Doda Barfi treacle tart, which is one of our signature desserts of Indian accent. Our kulchas, which are quite popular in Delhi, and definitely one or two staples. Our black dairy dal is very, very different from a usual dal what you get in regular Indian restaurants. So there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things which are going to be the area.
That sounds exciting. So the next question is both for Gary and for Manish. So for me, being a regular diner, wine pairing or good wines are quite important. So who decides the wine pairing? Is it the sommelier or the chef or both? What goes behind that thinking?
Who's going to answer first?
You go ahead first.
I'll go first. Well, with this, for example, we were pretty keen to get a sponsor on board. Number one, the sommelier at Tonka is excellent, so has no problem, along with the winemaker, of putting together some great combinations. It's funny because the wine food question, as a chef, I try not to overthink it. The best advice I ever got, and it seems because people get scared by it, best advice I ever got, and I've stuck with it for 20 plus years, is that if you can taste a wine, eat a dish, taste the wine, neither one should interfere with each other.
Correct.
That's the gold standard. So when somebody says, you know, how do you pair a wine? Well, the sommelier is just going to pluck out, or even the chef is going to pluck out, because it depends who's driving it. Like, if I've always found when I'm doing a wine dinner for a specific winery, I have to bend into the flavors of the wine. I mean, for example, I remember doing a wine dinner, something like 14 courses for Torbreck, which is a Barossa Valley vineyard that makes some of the biggest wines on the planet. And it almost seemed like an impossible task. Such big, you know, bold, you know, ripe fruits, tobacco, you know, you name it, anything that's going to punch you in the mouth. And I was like, how do I pair this with wine? But it's about, as a chef, it's about, if that's the angle, it's about picking a characteristic in the wine that accentuates it and doesn't interfere with it. And if it's the sommelier working the other way around, as they've done here with Manish's menu, it's about picking out a characteristic in the food that they can hang the wine's hat on. You know, if it's coconut, for example, with that vada, then what's the driving flavor? What can I pair it with that's gonna not interfere with that vada and with the wine? That's my 2 penneth worth.
Manish, you want to add anything else here?
Same. Like we got the list from our sponsor, Brown Brother, and then we gave our suggestions, and the sommelier there they planned the menu in that way. And this was a big myth that Indian food cannot be paired with wines. This was a bit of a myth, because past 14 years we are doing all the tasting menu with wine pairings, and it works very well, because the type of food where what we do is where chilies are used for flavor rather than blowing your head off. Because at home, my mother never made spicy food. No mother wants to kill their kids with spicy food. It was always on side. Like, you want to take a green chili on side, you want to take a pickle on side, you want to take a chutney on side. But normal home food is always where, and especially I belong to a vegetarian household where onion and garlic was also not allowed. So our household, the spices like asafoetida and all these things played a big role in flavoring the dishes. And so flavor of spices, and I have never come across a dish in India which one dish is dominated by one spice. It is always a blend of spices. It's not that one dish only dominated by cloves or some cinnamon or a cardamom. It's always the blend of spices which works for most of the dishes in India. And that is how we work with the wines also. And sometimes if there is a heavy lamb curry, you really need some light body Pinot Noir or something like that. It works very well with the heavy gelatiny kind of a nihari kind of a gravy. It works so well. So
you had to say nahari.
Definitely.
You had to say nahari, didn't you? We're already hungry, and then you say nahari.
So the next question for Gary. So the emergence of the TV shows, the cooking shows I'm talking about, and also the social media, we are overloaded by the food shows and what people are, putting together. Now there's a trend of home cooking, and people are really putting some amazing food at home, and some not really. So how the chefs really upping the game and reinventing themselves, because people are really doing that at home as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on. There's a lot of pressure, I find. No, there is. I don't know how Manish feels. I think you're always drawn back to cooking what you love to eat. That's that what you have to do. Aspiring to cook for, I don't know, recognition or not genuine reasons for loving your own food. I've been caught many years ago doing exactly that. So I've sworn that I'll never do it again. But there is pressure. But I think also that I'm doing a menu for some up and coming events, or a couple of menus for some up and coming events. I've got a bookshelf with 700-800 books in it, a huge resource of information. But the internet and social media has changed how we gather that information completely. I mean, the dynamics of learning even have changed completely. You know, and I saw that even on MasterChef, where I remember asking a young pastry chef, or amateur at the time, she now has a pastry business here called Jess Lemon. And I said, where did you learn how to do that? And it was a tempered chocolate ball or something equally as difficult. And she said, from YouTube. And I thought about my own training. And the first response is, that's ridiculous. But then now we understand it a lot better. You know, this was 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago. You know, when I trained back in the mid to late 80s, I had to earn the right for a recipe. You know, I had to, you know, wait for a cookbook. You know, if Manish had released his cookbook in 1990, I would have ordered it and waited for it to come all the way from India. And then that transfer of information was very different. Now it's instantaneous. You know, I can look up, you know, panipuri, for example, and get, you know, 1 million different recipes. Now, the integrity of that recipe may be difficult to sift through, but it's there. You know, I can search the tiniest thing and find it instantaneously. I can see what Noma cooked for dinner last night, or what Central in Peru cooked for dinner last night. I can see different ingredients. It's an incredible transfer of information. And it's changed how we teach young chefs. You know, we can send them away with a video reference, and they can at least get a good introduction into what they're about to learn, or practice at home, or bring some new ideas together. So I don't know whether that answers the question. There's a bit of pressure, but at the same time, there's also a great release of information that is quite thrilling, I think, as a foodie and as a chef to be part of.
Yeah, food has become a trend for sure. So often what happens, Gary, is that, you know, one can be, you know, let down by some of the restaurants that you go, you know, you've got a beautiful looking plate that's lacking character and harmony of, you know. So how do you go about making sure that there is a right mix of harmony, taste, so people come back for taste and not just a show plate?
It's a well, you know what? It's a process. I hate to be brutal, but it's a process of natural selection. You know, if you're not delivering, it's a brutal business. Restaurants that aren't delivering eventually, you know, I say eventually, can very quickly go broke. And, you know, people go out as much for an experience rather than just food these days. They want a complete experience, whether that's a pure dining experience or a bar dining experience, or to be seen. There's lots of reasons why people enjoy going out. And if you don't hit those markers, you'll find your business goes pear-shaped very quickly. And it puts the pressure on the business and the chef to be able to garner that feedback really quickly, to try and to be honest with your own cooking, to accept feedback, which even with the advent of social media, when it started, was really hard for us to deal with. You know, because I remember somebody coming into one of my restaurants and bagging a risotto that they were eating as they were eating it on social media. And I'm at home in my lounge room, and somebody texts me and say, hey, somebody's eating your risotto. You need to phone the restaurant, find out what's going on. Like, I'd never experienced anything like that before. Instant. And you kind of confront, instant feedback. You're confronted by it to start with, but it also gives you the opportunity to engage and to, you know, redirect or to resolve. So it's not going to change. It's with us forever, and it's keeping going. So any of the old stalwarts out there that bemoan this idea of social media and food influence and critics, everyone's a critic. Maybe once upon a time they never told you and never came back to your restaurant. Whereas now they're happy to tell you, and you either accept it, move with it, let it go. You know, it's an interesting space. Yeah, you know what? It's I always feel if I'm in a restaurant and serving 120 covers a night and I get 1 or 2 complaints about a thing, I might not take it seriously. If I get 5 or 6, then I've got to take it seriously.
Absolutely.
You know, many restaurateurs might tell you they take every single complaint seriously, but I remember certainly when MasterChef started, I'd hop from table to table after service at Phoenix, and I'd say, how did you find the, whatever it was, tortellini? And somebody would go, oh, it was beautiful, beautiful crustacean flavor of prawn, blah, blah, blah. Go to the next table and they go, oh, it was very strong in crustacean. Like, everybody would have a different idea. And in the end, I just asked a different question. I would say, how did you find the flavor of prawn with the barramundi, for example, you know, or whatever it was? Ask them a specific question that they have to think about, digest it, and give you a proper answer. How did the flavor of cumin work with the lamb? rather than how did you enjoy your meal? Because as soon as you say that, you're in trouble.
So is there any message that you have for the viewers today for your event or any other down the road events that's going to happen?
First thing is like really excited because this is the first time I'm cooking for people in Melbourne. It is really exciting. Second thing, one of the biggest challenge for cooking in Australia is that you have to do everything from scratch. And we are not carrying, usually when I go for pop-ups and all, or events and all, anywhere, we carry at least 300, 400 kilos of stuff in our bags. But here we are not carrying even a grain of salt with us.
Yeah, immigration is harsh.
So we are going to start everything from scratch. And that's because it happened with us a lot of time when you go somewhere, something you're so confident it doesn't work. Maybe ingredient is different or water is different, whatever. But so that is one challenge which is we have to definitely take care of that. And menu is really good signature dishes from different tasting menus, which we are putting on this menu. So it will be really interesting and showcasing Indian food in a complete different way, which is very familiar, but yet new and different.
Love it. What a good answer.
Thank you, Manish.
He knows there's a lot of hard work to come. That's what it is.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Last time I came through immigration, it's been very much the same probably for the last 6 months. You can't bring anything. So once upon a time, you could bring certain spices as long as they considered them not to be risky and harbor maybe insects and things. And because there's been a few bio kind of hazards recently, foot and mouth from Indonesia, a few other issues, fruit flies and things like that, they've just absolutely clamped down. And last time, no, it wasn't last time, it was the time before I came through, and I always declare everything I have. And they know me. So when I walk in, they're like, what have you got? Where have you been? I've been to India. I've got a few things. And they go, come on, open the suitcase. And I'm just really open with what I have. And to be honest, you really can't. You can bring cooked product as long as, you can bring cooked curry paste and things as long as it's labeled and detailed and it's, looks professional, etc. They'll let that through. But things like, fresh ingredients, raw spices, that's a tough one. So, but you know what I'm looking forward to? This is Konosh has enabled this event. So they're an online platform in India built around, a whole community of foodies that are essentially amateur bakers and cooks. It's a delivery platform. It's an educational platform. And they're really making some moves. They brought Pratik Sadhu over for Vivid in Sydney. He did a menu with Nell Robertson at Nell's restaurant, which was fabulous. And so what I'm loving is this kind of wave of Indian food, and I say Indian respectfully, regionally, however we want to package it up, to give people a better understanding of what a glorious and complex cuisine it is. So I think we want to see Manish back, for the food festival. We want to see him regularly come over and bring that with him, because I think, as we said right at the start, Melbourne's ready for this kind of explosion of different flavors and stuff that we haven't seen before. Really excited about it.
That's great. So wishing you both absolutely the best for the coming events. I'm sure it's going to be a huge success. So on behalf of Indus Age, I just want to say a big thank you for making time. I know you both are extremely busy, but I really enjoyed this, being a foodie myself. And, been to your restaurants, I've really enjoyed talking to two of the legends. So thank you for making time.
That's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And Manish, don't forget, we've got lots of friends over here. So you need the cavalry. We'll just call a few people. We'll get the cavalry.
Absolutely. We will do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. All the best.
Super.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Australia's first Indian magazine to have a national reach, Indus Age is the largest circulated South Asian magazine in Australia with 5 simultaneous editions, 55,000 copies printed monthly, 220,000 readers, largest network of clients, undisputed leader in community news. Indus Age is circulated in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane and Perth to over 525 outlets. Grab your copy now to get the latest on the community, news from India, Bollywood, music and much more. For more info, log on to www.indusage.com.au.